The character of Wolverine is one of Marvel's most beloved characters and one of their most well known. He has been one of my favorites since I was a kid. When I was younger, I thought he was so cool with his attitude and his powers. He seemed unstoppable. But as I got older, I started to see the other side of Wolverine and started to see the point of Wolverine. Just like many others, I got into Wolverine because of the X-Men movies and cartoons and video games. The more I saw of Wolverine, the more I thought he was so cool, and him being able to survive anything, being able to stop anyone and do anything he wanted, his attitude of not taking any crap from anyone and doing his own thing was just so cool to me as a kid, and is still super cool to me today. I thought the silent loner type vibes were just so awesome. But as I got older, I started to realize that attitude came from a place of pain. That Logan was a complicated man. He had a complicated past filled with hardships and struggles. As a child, I loved him for being unstoppable, but as a man, I idolized him for his ability to keep moving forward, despite the past and the pain. Wolverine was introduced as a soldier for Canada, sent to stop the Incredible Hulk, and later showed up in giant-sized X-Men. He became an X-Men and did a lot of good, but as Marvel started to use the character more and more, and he became more popular, he started to get a more expanded backstory, and we started to understand a little bit more about Logan's past. Logan has one of the most tragic backstories of all time. Back in 1832, Logan, or James, was born into this wealthy family, but he was also kind of an illegitimate son to the groundskeeper. He was weak and frail until he would unlock his mutant abilities through horrible trauma of seeing his father die. There's a lot of things that Wolverine goes through, and if we were to sit here and talk about it all day, this video would be 3 hours long. There's a lot of things that happens to Wolverine. He serves in wars, Black Ops forces, living for years in the wilderness alone, being captured, being experimented on, and the list goes on. But through all of it, Logan has always pushed forward. When I started to read more Wolverine comics as I got older, I saw all of Logan's tragedies and thought to myself that if I were to go through similar things, could I even move on? Logan has lost friends, family, lovers, time and time again, and yet he still pushes through. Although he pushes through, he still has his problems, but you can't blame him after so many years of trauma and tragedy. Logan has wandered around the whole world looking for purpose, looking for family, and every time he finds it, it seems to get the same conclusion: death and destruction. There's been many times in Logan's life where he gives up on himself and believes that all he is a weapon meant only to kill, but there's always people in his life that remind him that he's so much more than that. He's more than his pain, his past. He's more than what people tell him. You see, in the comics, Logan had no real family or purpose and found himself wandering, and most of the time ended up working as a weapon for governments. The Canadian government wanted to make Wolverine a government hero, so they made him his iconic suit and sent him on missions. Despite being called a hero, Logan was still just a weapon, sent place to place only to kill in a complete task for the government. That was until giant-sized X-Men when Professor X arrived. He told Logan that he could become an X-Men and finally do some good, some real good, and become a real hero. Professor X was the only one who had ever seen Logan as more than just a weapon, but a man that could be used for something greater. Logan needed someone in his life to believe in him and show him that there was something beyond all he had known his whole existence. Logan's role in the X-Men feels like a wise uncle who cares about the others deeply. The X-Men was the first real family Wolverine ever had. Through his time with the X-Men, he began to grow and change and find out who he is. He realized that he had never really truly had control over his own destiny, his own path, always being guided by someone else, and most of the time used for evil purposes. Despite the X-Men and Professor X knowing his past, they still loved him, and they still cared for him deeply. Something I would recommend that everyone who loves Wolverine should read is Wolverine Lives. This 5-issue run explores Wolverine having to relive moments of his life in order to save Professor X. Through the worst moments of his life, talking about how life always seems to want to take things away from Logan, and life wants to take away things that he's loved. He tries to stop the horrible things that he's done in the past from happening, and the horrible things that happened to him in the past, but Unfortunately, he's not able to stop those things without letting Professor X die. So he just lets those things happen. And in the last issue, he accepts that he couldn't be who he is today without it. He couldn't help the people around him right now. He couldn't do the things that he does right now without these horrible things happening. Because each horrible thing led to the next thing in his life, and led to the next thing in his life. And before you knew it, he was an X-Men, and he was doing good things. So although those horrible moments came to him, and although he wishes that he could change them and didn't do these horrible things, without them happening, he wouldn't be the person he is today, and he wouldn't be heading towards the goal that he is today. These comics are really good and explore Logan's past, and it's just a really cool introspective of current Logan, because throughout the whole story, our current Logan, our current Wolverine is constantly talking about how, these things affected him and how these events truly impacted his life. And it just really is a nice thing to kind of go over, especially if you're a Wolverine fan, and especially if you don't really know a lot of key moments in Logan's life. It kind of does a rough overview of those moments. My favorite part of this comic is what Logan says at the end. No point in dedicating too much time or worrying to history. You can't change a story that's already started. Only thing you can control is the ending. The exploration of Logan's growth as a character is really highlighted throughout these comics, and his changes for the better over the years. So please go read these comics, because on top of them being a really cool Wolverine story, it also has some amazing art, and I just feel like this story was really well put together, and there's a lot of quotes and things that Wolverine says that kind of just explains who the character is, and also it just really has some very impactful things. I was reading it and I was like, man, this is some really good stuff. Another one of my favorite Wolverine related things is the panels where everyone is asked who Wolverine is. Some say a murderer, some say a soldier, some say a trusted friend, and the list goes on. It goes through Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and each of them explain to this reporter who they believe Wolverine is. And I just think this is really cool because it also gets to see the relationship between Wolverine and all these other characters, but the best part is at the end. At the end of it all, Logan is asked what he thinks, and he says, all of them are wrong. No one understands who Wolverine is. And Logan says that Wolverine is a work in progress. Part of the reason Logan grows is by him understanding his trauma and his past and acknowledging it, and slowly accepting that it happened and understanding it and remembering it. But the most important part is to leave it in the past and move on from it. Logan is aware of his flaws and his mistakes, but decides those things won't hold him back. And that is what the character represents. The point of Wolverine is that we can change. We can constantly keep working on ourselves. We can constantly improve. And despite what other people say about you, and despite what you say, and despite what you've done in our past, it's what you decide for yourself. We decide who we are and what our future holds. Wolverine has been almost alive for 200 years. He's killed. He's loved, he's protected, he's hurt, he's been hurt, he's lived, he's died, he's cared, he's hated, and despite all of the things in his past, he still persists and he still keeps moving forward, constantly shaping himself into the man that he wants to become. The character of Wolverine is forgiving yourself and persevering through the pain and the struggle and keep moving forward. We may not have the healing factor or the claws, but just like Wolverine, our greatest power is perseverance. We have the power to decide who we become and what our tomorrow will bring. So despite what you may have done in the past, despite what your past says about you, and despite on what you think about yourself and what others tell you you are, you can improve and you can change. So get up and keep going. I'll leave you with one of my favorite Wolverine pages. When I read this, it inspired me, and I'm hoping it does the same, because I truly believe in everyone who watches this video, and I truly believe that anybody can change no matter what you've done. as long as you keep moving forward, and as long as you truly want change and to improve yourself, you can. So don't let anything stop you. And here's my favorite Wolverine page. Perhaps that's the answer. The key isn't winning or losing, it's making the attempt. I may never be what I ought to be, but how will I know unless I try? Sure, it's scary, but what's the alternative? Stagnation? A safer, more terrible form of death? Not of body, but of spirit. You took my dream away from me, Shigen, but only for a time. Because I'm a man, not a beast. A man. That mistake's gonna cost you. It's gonna cost you. Hope you guys have a good one, and you can improve, just like Wolverine.